Throughout history, people have imagined sailing to the planets and stars, riding invisible waves of wind and energy. For centuries, such dreams remained unattainable until the advent of the space age. But the vision of sailing on light, the concept of the solar sail, remained impossible until just the last few years. Solar sailing is still in its infancy, and its full potential is largely unrealized. LunarSail is an innovative project intended to advance the state-of-the-art of solar sailing and its applications for lunar and deep space exploration, and to do so at a much lower cost than traditional government-led space programs, while inviting public participation in mission design and execution. Hi, my name is Matt Travis. I am Executive Director of the Aerospace Research and Engineering Systems Institute, a tax-exempt 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting space exploration and STEM education through innovative hands-on projects involving students and the general public. I would like to invite you and everyone in the public to join with us and participate in a unique space mission to send the first solar sail-powered spacecraft into orbit around another celestial body. Our LunarSail project will see a Cubesat-sized spacecraft propelled and navigated by a solar sail into orbit around the moon. Before I get into more detail about LunarSail, let's take a look at some background and history of the Cubesat spacecraft design and solar sail technology in general. Solar sailing is a novel, propellantless form of spacecraft propulsion. Solar sails use a phenomenon that has a proven measured effect on spacecraft. Solar pressure affects all craft, whether in interplanetary space or in orbit around a planet or small body. For example, a spacecraft going to Mars may be displaced by more than 1,000 kilometers by solar pressure, so its effects must be accounted for in trajectory planning or counteracted by course correction rocket firings along the way. The concept of solar sails has been around for over 500 years in one form or another. In 1610, Johann Kepler observed that comet tails always point away from the sun, and he suggested that if one would, quote, provide ships or sails adapted to the heavenly breezes, and there will be some who will brave even that void. In his novel From the Earth to the Moon, published in 1865, Jules Verne wrote, "There will someday appear velocities far greater than these, of the planets, of which light or electricity will probably be the mechanical agent. We shall one day travel to the moon, the planets, and the stars." This is possibly the first published recognition that light could move ships through space. However, the first formal technology design effort for a solar sail did not begin until 1976 at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory for a proposed mission that was never built to rendezvous with Halley's Comet in 1986. The Sunjammer project, named after Arthur C. Clarke's solar sailing fictional spacecraft, is part of a NASA research project to develop a technology demonstration mission of a mission-capable solar sail. Sunjammer, which will be the largest solar sail ever to fly in space, is targeted for launch next year on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. It will use its giant sail to fly to a point beyond the moon, to the L1 Lagrange point, where the gravitational pull of the Earth, Moon, and Sun balance each other out and will allow Sunjammer to hover around that point nearly 2 million miles from Earth. The first successful solar sail mission was launched by the Japanese space agency JAXA in early 2010. Their solar sail spacecraft, named Icarus, had a sail measuring 200 square meters, and it traveled past Earth and the Moon all the way to Venus while still operating successfully. One of the most frequently heard questions is, what is a Cubesat? A Cubesat is a type of miniaturized satellite for space research that usually has a volume of exactly 1 liter, a 10 centimeter cube, and a mass of no more than about 1 1/3 kilograms. It typically uses commercial off-the-shelf components for its electronics to keep costs low. Because of their small size and mass, CubeSats form cost-effective means of getting payloads to orbit. Also because of their size, most CubeSats carry only 1 or 2 scientific instruments as their primary payloads. The standard 10 by 10 by 10 centimeter basic CubeSat is often called a 1U CubeSat, meaning 1 unit. CubeSats are scalable along their axes by 1 unit increments. 2U and 3U CubeSats have been both built and launched. There are plans for CubeSats up to 6 units in size. The majority of CubeSat development comes from academia, but several companies have also built CubeSats, including large satellite maker Boeing. The CubeSat format is also popular with amateur radio satellite builders such as AMSAT, the Radio Amateur Satellite Corporation. The CubeSat history goes back about 15 years. Back in 1999, California Polytechnic State University and Stanford University developed the CubeSat specification to help universities worldwide perform space science and exploration. The term CubeSat was coined to denote nanosatellites that adhere to the standards described in the CubeSat design specification, which dictates a cube-shaped satellite. Simplification of the satellite's infrastructure makes it possible to design and produce a workable satellite at relatively low cost. Encapsulation of the launcher payload interface takes away the prohibitive amount of managerial work that would previously be required for mating a piggyback satellite with its launcher. And unification among payloads and launchers enables quick exchanges of payloads and utilization of launch opportunities on short notice. With their relatively small size and simplicity, CubeSats can each be assembled and launched for less than traditional small satellites and far less than larger spacecraft. This has made the CubeSat a viable option for schools and universities across the world, as well as for government space agencies looking to do quick turnaround science and technology research in space. LunarSail is being designed as either a 3-unit or 6-unit CubeSat, depending on the final dimensions and size of the solar sail that we are going to employ. Right now we are looking at between a 200 and 400 square meter sail. 100 square meters easily fits into a 3-unit CubeSat. Larger than that, we may need to go to 6 units. Of course, if we do, that will increase the cost of the spacecraft, which is something we don't really want to see happen. The solar sail will probably have to be outsourced from a manufacturer who knows how to build them. The solar sail outwardly looks like the simplest piece of hardware on the spacecraft, but in reality it is in some ways the most complex. It needs to be durable, it needs to be flexible, it needs to be low mass, and it needs to be low volume when packed. So that we don't have to spend years reinventing, mylar fabric, we will probably outsource the solar sail to a different manufacturer. LunarSail will ideally hitch a ride on a launch that is going to either geosynchronous or a high eccentricity orbit, high apogee, lower perigee. What this will enable is when the spacecraft is released from the launch vehicle, that the momentum it already has will take it beyond low Earth orbit and through the radiation belts and out far enough away from Earth to where the solar wind can have a greater effect on the sail and get the spacecraft moving that much faster, that much sooner. We're using a relatively small solar sail, and so any assistance we can get from the launch vehicle will only be to our benefit. However, we recognize and realize the fact that we may end up on a launch only going to a circular low Earth orbit, and our mission design is going to have to take that into account if that eventuality arises. The spacecraft itself, the satellite chassis and the spacecraft bus, is going to be a standard Cubesat spacecraft. It will adhere to the Cubesat specification. It will most likely be deployed from a Cal Poly, P-pod dispenser. We do not want to come up with a custom satellite design for the basic hardware, since that's already been designed and perfected. Additionally, the spacecraft chassis itself, in addition to the solar sail, will most likely be outsourced. We could manufacture the panels and rails and brackets ourselves, but to do that then we would get into a situation of having to certify all that hardware, test it out for spaceworthiness, etc., which would only add cost and time to the mission. If we buy the basic spacecraft bus and chassis off the shelf, we know that it is already a space-proven design, and that will minimize impact to our schedule. For the electronics in the spacecraft, some of it may be specific to CubeSats of this type, but we also intend for the primary computer managing the science payloads and operating the solar sail to use what is known as a Raspberry Pi computer. That is a computer about the size of a deck of cards, and it runs a version of BSD Linux, so it is open source. The hardware itself is open source. It is standard commercial off-the-shelf hardware, and it is very, very inexpensive. The basic computer itself and associated peripheral hardware can be had for, in the hundreds of dollars. There are other CubeSat projects that are using the Arduino mini computer. These are both single board computers, which means there's one circuit board and all the chips and ports are on that board. Like I said, others are using Arduino. So we chose the Raspberry Pi because part of what our organization tries to do is utilize new hardware and processes and techniques that haven't been done before. We don't just want to copy another CubeSat design. We want to come up with something new and new uses for hardware that is already out there. So we chose the Raspberry Pi. The spacecraft itself is going to be very light. It'll be, in the single digits of kilograms in mass. And as far as the launch vehicle is concerned, there won't be anything special that we'll need from a launch provider either. For our actual design, since we didn't want to start from scratch, obviously, we are using NASA's LunarSail D as a conceptual starting point. LunarSail D was NASA's first solar sail mission that the agency launched into space. It was launched in November of 2010, and it stayed in orbit for about 240 days. This mission only went to low Earth orbit, and it was designed primarily to test using a solar sail to deorbit a spacecraft, as opposed to what we're trying to do, and that is send it farther out into space. But the mission was a complete success. NanoSail D was a 3-unit CubeSat, and it had a 100 square meter solar sail. So we're using that as just a conceptual starting point. There are some design specifics that we can borrow from in our own design, but a lot of what we're going to do is going to require different hardware, different designs, different components and processes. But fortunately, since we do have that base of experience to learn from, that does, again, help our schedule and our cost. You can learn more about our design specifics and our progress with the technical aspects by visiting our website at LunarSail.com or our Facebook page at facebook.com/LunarSail. We also have a Twitter account, LunarSail, and we will be posting updates throughout the project via those social media outlets as well as others as we progress and build out in the project. Speaking of building out in progress, let me go into the schedule a little bit. Basic design concept will be finalized by the end of this year. We intend to have a final design sometime in the summer time frame of next year. That should hopefully enable us to start actually building prototypes and testing in the second half of next year, because we hope and intend to have a completed spacecraft ready for launch, minus certifications, flight readiness reviews, finding a launch opportunity. But the hardware spacecraft itself, we are hoping to have completed and tested and proven out by the summer of 2016. Launch may not happen till a year, 2 years, 3 years after that, depending on launcher availability, scheduling, and of course funding. We will obviously be looking at options such as NASA's educational Cubesat launch opportunities, where NASA picks up the launch costs and things like that. But we also have to take into consideration that there may be some launch costs that we will have to bear ourselves. And any additional cost could drag out the schedule a bit. But the spacecraft itself, within 3 years, we hope to have completed. And again, you can visit our website to get all the updates on that progress. We have already started procuring hardware. A lot of the lower cost items we've been able to purchase, and we've been fortunate through donations of hardware and software. I will show you in just a second here, but we have been donated several $1,000s worth of software, a few $1,000s worth of old used computers, and we have purchased some of the components that we need to do early testing, prototyping, and software development with. And I will show those to you right now. Here you see a prototype design of one module, a 1-unit module CubeSat for LunarSail. The final spacecraft design will include either 3 or 6 of these modules. This we're just using to look at possible options for placement of computer boards, sensors, radiation detectors, and the like. And we're doing this inside of SolidWorks, We have been fortunate enough to have donated licenses from our supporters of SolidWorks, MATLAB, LabVIEW, Mathematica, Adobe Creative Suite, and Microsoft Office. All those software licenses combined amounts to thousands of dollars, and we've been lucky and blessed enough that we have been able to get those items donated. That takes a huge burden off of us. Now, if I move the camera over here, you'll see 19 desktop Windows PCs. All of these are in working order. They are all dual or quad core computers, or in the case of the Dells there on the right, they are Pentium 4 computers. I don't remember what processor model, but every one of them work. Some of them will be converted over to Linux machines, and we'll be able to use these for interfacing with some of the spacecraft hardware, doing some of the software development work, developing our web-based dashboard that we'll have, and things like that. The value of those computers together, used isn't as much, but new, those computers combined would have been in the thousands of dollars as well. Now, panning down here, this is a Rainbow Pi. As you can see, it is about the size of a deck of cards. Actually, it's smaller than a deck of cards. It runs on an ARM processor, and it operates on a version of Linux. And basically, it's not unlike the insides of a cell phone, except there's no cell phone transmitter, and it is equipped with standard PC-type ports. We have network port, USB ports, FireWire, etc. Some of these will just, like the network port, will probably remove that and have a hardwired network interface to go to other components. That's all being tested out. Fortunately, these things are really cheap, so we can, buy a bunch of them and basically deconstruct them, reconstruct them, break them, and come up with a modification that will work on the spacecraft. And this is some of the equipment that we use for that. This is one of our prototype boards that we use with an LCD monitor. We have PIC chips, memory modules. This is an integrating accelerometer of the kind, although not exactly the same, as we will have on the spacecraft as part of our telemetry package to monitor the spacecraft's condition during flight. And this is a servo controller, and we're going to need this type of controller to actually move the solar sails as we navigate to the moon, because the sails are going to have to be movable to maintain trim with respect to the solar wind to actually steer toward and catch up with the moon. The solar sails, there will actually be 4 of them. Each one will be pretty much triangle shaped, and when they're together, attached at a central point at the spacecraft, it will form a square shape. So there will be the spacecraft here, there will be a sail segment here, sail segment here, here, and each one of those will be independently movable to trim out the spacecraft's travels. So there is some of the hardware that we have, as well as some of the software. And all in all, considering that we are at the very early stages of this project, we think we are getting a good head start on some of the fundamentals that we're going to need to make good progress on a design and prototyping and software as we move forward with the LunarSail. Now I'd like to talk about how you can get involved, and this is the part that really excites me. You don't have to be a technical person or a big-time donor to be involved with LunarSail. First off, of course, if you have experience in other nanosatellite, amateur satellite, Cubesat projects, we welcome all the expertise that we can get. Linux programmers, amateur radio enthusiasts are highly desired. People who understand and know about the radiation environment in space. We'll need people who are good with tools, soldering, working with computer hardware. Any help in those areas is more than welcomed. We want to build up our team of volunteers as big as we can get it, as we need to build, launch, and operate LunarSail. Obviously, if you have computer hardware, machine tools, office furniture that you want to donate, we gladly accept, as well as financial donations. And we do have crowdfunding sites set up on the major well-known crowdfunding outlets. We also take direct donations, either check or donate on our website. We have PayPal on there. And every donation, whether it's hardware, labor, or money, is tax deductible. We are a 501c3 tax-exempt organization. So please do consider that as well. But even if you cannot participate in any of those ways, we have worked out a concept to bring in anybody who wants into this history-making lunar orbiting spacecraft. What we're going to do is there's going to be reserved memory on the spacecraft where we would like everybody to contribute their artwork, their short messages, video clips, anything creative like that. We will digitize this material and store it on the spacecraft. Once LunarSail is at the moon, we're going to transmit that artwork, whether it's, you know, graphic in nature or audio or video. We'll transmit that back to Earth, and anybody on Earth with the ability to receive the satellite signal will be able to see this art. It will be art from the moon, and we want to engage the entire global artist community in this. Additionally, since not everybody will be able to receive the signal from the satellite directly, and in fact it would take a pretty hefty antenna and receiver to do that, we will also be retransmitting all of that through our own website, through our web-based and software-based dashboard, through a mobile phone app, through social media such as Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. We will redistribute all of that, rebroadcast all of it for anybody and everybody in the world to see. So if you're an artist, if you're a musician, if you're a photographer, if you're a poet, and you have artwork that you would like to share with the entire world, all at once, simultaneously, we invite you to contribute it to our project, and we will include it on the spacecraft, and we will send your art to the moon and then back to the entire world. I think that is that'll be such an inspiration to everybody, especially small children, especially the underprivileged and disadvantaged in the world, when they see that you can paint a picture, you can write a little song and have it go to that moon out there, and then everybody down here can see it. I think that will be really, really inspirational and a real boost to promoting both space exploration and STEM education. So that is one way, no cost, we're not charging anything for that. That is one no-cost, easy way that you can participate in this exciting mission. Additionally, on the crowdfunding websites, for financial donations, we do have reward tiers set up. So if you give $1, you get something, $5, $10, $100. You get a special gift back from us as our way of saying thank you. And they range anywhere from, you know, stickers and patches, shirts, special mention on our website and on our social media with your own customized link that you want to tell the world about, all the way up to VIP treatment at the actual launch. So please check those out and do consider donating to LunarSail. We would greatly, greatly appreciate it. This mission is what we like to call a citizen space mission. The spacecraft is going to be built via crowdsourcing. The mission is going to be operated via crowdsourcing. The mission is going to be funded using crowdfunding. Everything that's done, even though it's our organization's project, all of the accomplishments, all of the achievements are only going to be possible. They'll only come to reality if the public is involved. So when LunarSail is orbiting the moon, if you've contributed, whether it's money, hardware, labor, a painting or music video, you'll be able to look up at the moon and tell your friends and your family that you helped put a spacecraft up there. And when they don't believe you, you can bring up the website and say, I contributed to the success of that. Because again, there is no contribution that is too big or too small to be important in this mission. Any and every contribution will be welcomed with deep gratitude by our team. And I'll make one last remark regarding finances and funding. The solar sail, equipment called ADAX, and power generating solar arrays are expensive. We're working on options for financing those. The spacecraft skeleton, the chassis, and the internal computer components and the scientific equipment, much, much less expensive. We think we can procure all of that and assemble it into the basic spacecraft for around $30,000. That's our goal to stay below that. Obviously, costs are what costs are, and donations are what donations are, so that in the end is going to fluctuate. But our crowdfunding activities are focused on generating that amount of the financing. Money for, again, like the solar sails, which will have to be outsourced. Obviously, crowdfunding will contribute to that as well, but we do understand that we live in reality, and we're going to have to partner with industry, most likely partner with government, government contract, government grant would help a lot. We realize that we're going to have to explore those avenues too. But the heart and soul of the spacecraft and the core of the mission is going to be funded by the public and by us internally. This mission will stand on not just the shoulders of giants, but the shoulders of the citizens of the world. And so, one last time, I encourage you to visit the crowdfunding websites. Visit our own website at LunarSail.com and please consider making a contribution to the success of this groundbreaking, innovative mission to send a solar sail powered Cubesat into orbit around the moon. And I thank you for watching this video.